This is Geek Public Radio right here on geekpublicradio.com, and we're sitting at InConJunction. If you have been listening to the radio station all weekend long, we've been here doing live shows, talking to people, having a good time. We have some stuff on Facebook Live about us doing interviewing people and taking a look at stuff. But today, the podcast, we are sitting in Video Room Veterans 1 here at Marriott East with Chuck Boudreau and Mark Rakup. Mm-hmm. I should have asked if it was which vowel was stressed.
Very good. No worries.
But so a little bit about you guys. You are the director of the film festival for Gen Con.
Yeah. I've been running the film festival for Gen Con since 2010. This year we've got like 135 films that we'll be screening. Short films, features. I think there's probably about 20 features in the lineup. Anything that's geek related. That's what we do. So horror, science fiction, fantasy, any geeky type comedies that come along, and any documentaries that have anything to do with any of those type of subjects. And of course, since Gen Con is the world's largest and longest running gaming convention, anything that has to do with a gaming format, we're there.
So how did you get, who started this, and was it your idea, or did you come on board? Or?
So Gen Con's been running now for 51 years. This will be Gen Con 51. It started in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, therefore its name, Gen Con. It's also started as a wargaming convention, so you had the Geneva Conventions of War, and it was in Lake Geneva, so therefore Gen Con, and the Geneva Convention. And they outgrew the space in Lake Geneva sometime in the mid-'80s or early '80s, and they moved everything to Milwaukee, and they eventually outgrew Milwaukee, and of course it changed hands a couple of times as the original TSR owners sold out to Wizards of the Coast, who eventually sold out to Hasbro, who eventually decided they didn't know what to do with a convention. They're a gaming company. And so they actually sold it back to Peter Atkinson, who was the owner of Wizards of the Coast at the time. So Peter's running it now. Actually, his crew is. He kind of steps back and just lets them handle it all. And they approached me about helping with the film track. Now, they've always shown movies at Gen Con, just like every other convention out there. Right. Shows some form of movies, fan favorites or whatever. When I took it over, they had started down the road of looking into running a lot of independent films, but I told them what I wanted to do was to actually turn it into a true film festival. And that's what we've developed now, and it's been going over great. We have filmmakers from all around the world showing up.
We put stuff in all the time.
Yeah, you guys have some stuff in it this year. And our horror and horror comedy blocks have already sold out, and we're about a month out from the convention. So we're really excited about how that's going. I've got a documentary that sold out 2 screenings. Nice. And of course that one is just a beautiful documentary about all of the art of Dungeons and Dragons. And they interview the artists and the people who worked for TSR back when they were a little brick and mortar company. It is just a fabulous little film. And we actually ended up scheduling a Sunday morning 3rd screening of it, which I think will probably also sell out between now and the time the convention starts. So yeah, it's amazing what films get legs there. And like I say, filmmakers from all over. I've got people coming in from Australia, Korea.
I knew last year there was a Japanese film in there. And there was from like I said, there's this
all over the world. All over the world. And it's not just that they send me the films. These filmmakers actually travel. I had a guy. This has been about 4 or 5 years ago. A guy that was a little disappointed when he found out that him traveling from Sydney, Australia, didn't get the record for the longest travel that year. There was actually somebody from Adelaide, Australia, that had to fly an hour to get to Sydney to catch their flight to come. So I don't even know if they were on the same flight. They easily could have been. And about 2 years ago, we had a guy from New Zealand that actually did a GoFundMe campaign in order to get the airline tickets to come to Indianapolis for Gen Con. Nice. And Mark here has also done some films that have shown there too. And alongside of his other interesting business.
Right.
So how did you guys, how did
that happen?
Yes.
We met in high school way back in the day.
It was a very interesting high school.
Very much so. We were the geeks and the nerds. We didn't fit into any of the social clique, so we created our own. And everybody was looking for something to do, and I said, well, I want to make movies. You guys can come along if you want. And I made 2 Batman fan films in high school, then made a 3rd Batman fan film in college, and that's what led me to my main business, which is building 1966 Batmobiles. The company name is Fiberglass Freaks. Yes, you'd have to be a freak to work in fiberglass. That's the way to remember us. And we have a website. We're on YouTube. We're all over Facebook. So be sure to check that out. But that is really what led all of us together were these oddball projects. And we ended up putting together a pretty good group of people. And that's how Chuck and I met, was working on my first professional film. It's what led you, I think, Chuck, into filmmaking.
Pretty much.
Uh,
Was Rock and Roll Starship, which showed here at InCon way back in 97. Was, I think, the first year it showed here. So,
and you and I, we've been coming to InConJunction here since InConJunction 4, which was out at the airport, Hilton.
right.
So what number are we on now?
I can't count that high.
38?
Yeah, we're at 38.
Well, they must have skipped some numbers there. We can't be that old. But I don't know that I've missed one
Ditto.
in all those years.
And I've been a guest at InCon all but 2 years since 1995. 1 year this year because of choice. I decided I wanted to take a break, and then I ended up bringing a Batmobile here anyway.
So that the history of that Batmobile kind of ties into everything we're talking about, because it was because of movie making that Batmobile that's sitting in the dealer's room right now was created.
Right.
As you said, he was making his 3rd Batman fan film. He wasn't obsessed.
Just a little.
And we were, 3/4 of the way through shooting a film, and he's like, we need a car.
We were working on it all that time, actually.
Yeah.
But it took 2.5 summers to build the car, and I expected it to take half of 1 summer.
Because we had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
Well, that's how most planes start. Like, how do we do this? I don't know. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's
Well, right.
exactly.
We had no automotive experience. We had no automotive tools. We willed the car into being from plywood and wood paneling and styrofoam, sheet metal,
Bondo.
and lots of fiberglass, lots of Bondo. But, we had built sets. We had made costumes. We had done
How
props,
hard
all
could
of
it
this.
be?
Right. It was impossibly hard, but we didn't know that at the time. So, since we didn't know we couldn't do it, we did it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where the most of the fun stuff happens. It's like, I didn't know it was going to be this hard, but,
Yeah,
So-
and then from there, tell us how you got from, that car actually sat in a garage for a very long time.
Right.
And it was not quite the way it looks now back then.
Right. About 20 years ago, we tore off the back half of the car because the wood that we used on the inside of it, under the fiberglass, was starting to rot. So it was time that we tore off the back half of the car, and that gave me an opportunity to make it a little bit better, a little bit stronger, and a little bit more accurate all at the same time. So constructed that out of foam, and that's the back half of the car that you see today is made out of styrofoam with lots of fiberglass on it. And it was about that same time as when we were gearing up for Starship 2, the sequel to Rock and Roll Starship. And that's really about the time when it cemented your part of filmmaking as the lead sound man. You had been involved with post-production on Starship 1, heavily into post-production.
Yeah.
All of the mixing and everything. This is way back before you're talking about being able to do nonlinear editing and things like this.
Okay, so the original Rock and Roll Starship that we shot back in, I think we were talking about this
Super
earlier, was
8
like
movie film.
Yes, it was actually shot on Super 8 sound film.
March 4th of 1991
Was when-
the first day of shooting
Yeah.
on that.
And so that first day of shooting, I get a phone call. Hey, Chuck, my sound guy didn't show up. And I had a small recording studio that I'd set up to record music that nobody should ever hear. And so he's like, you have some sound equipment.
Would you please?
And like, it's not that kind of sound equipment. No, but it is sound equipment. And we've got everybody here. We're ready to roll.
More than what we have right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I took a last-minute day off work, drug all my equipment over there, set it all up, and
We showed a grip how to become a sound man.
yeah, because I hadn't planned to be on set the whole time, and as it turns out, because of work, I couldn't be, which always seems to be the case. And so we ended up showing Tim Fallowfield how to run the sound, and he ended up becoming the sound guy for Rock and Roll Starship, the first film. And it was later that as we got into the pickup shots, that I ended up taking over more doing the sound. Mm-hmm. And of course, during post-production, there again, all this was on tape. There was no digital sound involved in that. Eventually, we transferred it to a digital tape, but even then, it was linear editing, which was a nightmare. To this day, honestly, the last third of that film needs remixed because we literally ran out of time ahead of the premiere and never went back and did that final finesse to it because the stuff we were working with was so cumbersome to work with that we never got to.
So antiquated.
Yeah.
But it opened up a lot of doors. It led us in to be able to work in the film business on a professional level, and we worked on many, many movies together for others as well as for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that has just been absolutely wonderful. One of the movies that we worked on was A Time for the Heart with Chris Allen. That was selected for the San Diego Comic-Con International Film Festival. So the very first time I got to go to San Diego Comic-Con was as a guest. Who would have ever thought that would have happened?
Yeah. Well, if you were trying to buy tickets, that would be...
Yeah, it's actually easier to get in as a guest than it is to buy a ticket to San Diego.
Very true.
But back up on Chris, because that was the interesting thing with Chris Allen. He loved to do fan films. Time for the Heart was not a fan film; it was an original piece, which was awesome. The story was really good. It was kind of somewhere in time in reverse. Yeah, but his first fan film that he was working on was a mashup between the 1960s Star Trek and the 1960s Batman, and he contacted Mark through a Batman message board because he was looking for a Batmobile for his film. He had no idea that we made movies.
And so there he is on the message board saying, hey, does anybody know where I can get a Batmobile? And I chimed in and said, oh, Chris, where are you located? He said, Indianapolis. I said, oh, Chris, we have to talk.
I'm right around the corner, man.
The rest was history because based out of Logansport, we ended up building sets for him. We built the Enterprise Bridge. He was planning on doing everything in his garage.
Yeah, it was a very shoestring budget. It was intended originally to be kind of a one-man shoot. He was going to be directing and filming it, and we showed up not only with the Batmobile, we showed up with a full crew, and locations and sets. And
it's like, oh, if you're going to do this,
do it
here.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, well, you sold us on it. Let's do it.
Right. And what a fun project that was. So we got to meet a lot of fantastic actors that we've worked with several times since then. And it's just been a blast. That thing has won. It's called Star Trek vs. Batman. It has won all kinds of awards at science fiction film festivals, and it really has done quite well.
Yeah.
So that was
there's
really interesting.
There's certainly some rough edges to it, but for what was essentially his first effort, I think it came out it was really ambitious, but I think it came out really well.
Technically his third film, but it was certainly the most ambitious one he'd ever done. So
but check forward on the YouTube, and you'll find it out there. Star Trek versus Batman. It's definitely worth the fun. I tell you, even the credit sequence he did was just amazing. Mm-hmm. He remade both the Batman and the '60s Star Trek credit sequences, and he would start off one episode with the Star Trek intro, and then it would end with the Batman end credits. And then the next episode would start with the Batman animated intro and end with the Star Trek credits. It was really interesting the way he pulled all that together and mashed up the two. The brilliance of that was, since both of those were actually on the air at the same time, and it was just as color was coming out here in the States, everything was primary colors in both shows. So when you saw...
So visually, it was...
Visually, it blended beautifully.
Beautifully.
So when you had the Joker on the set of the Enterprise, it looked right. Why would that look right?
It was so much fun. And, of course, we used Bat-1, our first Batmobile for that. And then, by that point, Fiberglass Freaks was going. We had started that in 2003. We have now completed 27 Batmobiles since 2003. Our 15-year anniversary is coming up in September, and we're going to be holding a Comic-Con in Logansport, Indiana, at the Cass County Airport. We're bringing in the screen-used Batcopter. So we're going to have an absolute blast.
Rides in the Batcopter.
Selling rides in the Batcopter. You can take up 2 people at a time. And then we'll also have a replica Bat Cycle, and one of our replica Batmobiles will be on display along with Bat-1. And it's going to be a ton of fun. That's September 22nd and 23rd here in 2018. So really looking forward to that.
Sweet. As I squeak, because I've been talking all week, it's like... you had mentioned a movie that you guys were working on.
The movie that shall not be named.
Oh, you mean Starship 2, Rendezvous with Ramses?
Starship 2, Rendezvous with Ramses. The sequel to Rock and Roll Starship, we shot back in 2001 and 2002. It's been in post-production hell ever since then, and hopefully, Lord willing, one day it'll be completed. We bit off more than we could chew special effects-wise, and that's why it's taking so long.
That happens, especially with sci-fi.
It really does.
And we should have learned our lesson from the first film, which also took quite a while in post-production, not quite this long. But we
had 12 minutes of visual effect shots in Starship 1, which were all done with models, and then we used the video toaster by Amiga for doing all of the special effects to combine all of those optical elements. And that took 3.5 years to do that. One laser battle took 40 hours, just to give you kind of an idea of what it was like, especially back in those days. Today, that part's a little bit easier, but it still is astronomical as far as the amount of work goes. With 2,000 visual effects shots in Starship 2, wow. It's huge. It is huge. And it's looking fantastic. Jeff Ello, our special effects supervisor, is doing a terrific job. He's really pulling out some really cool stuff. And when it is completed, it's going to be one of those that it's going to move the earth a little bit, because it's going to be a fantastic time. We'll premiere it here in Indianapolis. We'll premiere it in Logansport and probably a handful of other places. So when that day comes, it'll be a pretty big set of events, plural.
Cool. I hope we can come out, because I've been, as more I hear about it, it's like I totally got it. I got to see this.
I tell you, the film itself, even without all the visual effects in it, is so... whenever I'm working on a film, I always try to watch it critically in order to get, what needs tweaked, what little pieces here. As an editor, you look at it and you go, should that scene be a little different? Can we trim that a bit? Or should we pump up the music or something here or there, whatever? My problem with this film is when I watch it, I get sucked into it. And after 5 minutes... I'm in the film, and I'm not watching it critically anymore. I'm not looking for those little nuances, because
the story is that engaging.
The stories that engaging, the character interactions are just
We don't say that
perfect.
Because we made it. We're fans, too. As we're watching this thing, it's really wild. The story of Starship 2, our lead characters, Bob, Doug, and George, accidentally go back into time right before they created the biggest mistake of their lives. They blew up the Ramses colony. So they have a chance to stop themselves from doing this horrible thing that ruined their lives, ruined the universe, and all of this kind of thing. So they do it. But as always with a time travel movie, there might be reasons why something had to happen. And then they end up having to go back in time to do what?
To stop themselves from blowing up the Ramses colony.
They are the heroes, and they are the villains. When we were writing
this script, because Mark and I wrote this script together, when we were writing the script, we were trying to put a villain in. Mm-hmm. We tried to put a villain in so hard, and we're like, well, what should this villain be? Should it be a woman? Should it be a man?
There's got to be a villain.
There's always a villain in that type of movie. And we looked at it, no. They are their own antagonists and protagonists.
Right.
And they actually switch roles as the film moves along. It didn't need a villain.
And we peppered, the first movie, we didn't have any name stars at all. There was nobody in it that anybody had ever heard of outside of Logansport or Indianapolis. So we ended up putting a few name stars in there. They're playing secondary roles, but John Aston Gomez from the original Addams Family is in it. A couple guys from Bab 5. We had Richard Biggs, who's no longer with us anymore, and also Jason Carter. Then Richard Hatch, who is also no longer with us, sadly, from both Battlestar Galacticas, are in this movie. So 4 reasonably decent,
very, very recognizable faces will be
B
there.
stars.
Yeah.
And I heard that they were here.
Yes. So both Richard Hatch, Richard Biggs, and Jason Carter were guests of InConJunction.
Right.
Richard was the year afterwards, but Richard Hatch, but Richard Biggs and Jason Carter were both the same year, and those two guys were best friends. And it really tore Jason up when Richard passed away. But we had Richard Biggs come in a day early, and we took them up to the set, and we shot all of his stuff. And then we had Jason Carter show up the day after the convention. He stayed a day late, and we did all of Jason's stuff. And
then a year later, we were shooting with Richard Hatch at the convention.
Yes.
This was back when we were at the Sheraton rather than here at the Marriott. So we were able to take one of the convention rooms.
Yeah,
and
one of the
we built
conference
3
rooms, something
sets.
like this.
It was almost exactly this size.
in the set.
So we
Yeah.
built 3 sets, and then we had the crew on one side. So we would turn the lights and the cameras 90 degrees and shoot from one set, shoot to the other set, shoot to the other, and then we were redressing the first set to be another one. So it ended up being about 7 sets. We shot 8.5 pages of script, which is an incredible amount if anybody knows anything about filmmaking at all. 8.5 pages of script in 4 hours.
Yeah. And it was all because we were really, really prepared. We actually put all of Richard's lines on cue cards, so you wouldn't have to memorize all that.
There's a story behind that. He calls up the day before, and my wife, Jill Raka, picks up the phone, and, "Hi, this is Richard Hatch." "Well, hi." And by the way, I just got the script. There's no way I'm going to be able to memorize all the dialogue in time. Can you do cue cards? So Jill says, "Sure." So she and Nancy were working until 4 a.m. on cue cards because you were talking 8.5 pages worth of dialogue to have to put on those cue cards. But
They did it.
they did it. And it was incredible. Everything went very smoothly because of the pre-production. That's one of the specialties that we talk about at different conventions, is putting on seminars where you talk about the importance of pre-production. You always want to be prepared. You always want to have plans A, B, C, and D ready to go at a moment's notice in filmmaking. And the lower the budget is, the more you really need to have those backup plans in place.
It's because you don't have the people in place.
Or the money,
Yeah.
often.
So
times.
it takes time, money, and people. Mm-hmm. And if you're short on any one of those, you're going to have to really make up for it for the other two. And a lot of times in independent film, you're short on 2 of those. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're at.
So our advice for anybody that's getting ready to gear up for a movie is whatever time you think you need for pre-production, double it. And then you'll probably be okay.
No film has ever failed because of too much pre-production.
Man, there was too much. There's just way too much
Yeah, we
pre-production.
were way too prepared
on
when we
that
got on
last
set.
movie.
Then you're talking about doing all that, like all of the dialogue and whatnot in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For those that don't know, like normally you get 5 pages a day.
Yeah, typically it takes...
That's a decent...
Sometimes
if,
less.
if you're
8
really
hour
prepared, you can get about a page an hour on set. And so we basically doubled that by being very prepared. And a lot of that was the fact that the way we set up that room. So it was a rectangular conference room, very similar to the one we're in, a little smaller than this, maybe half the size.
Narrower. Mm-hmm.
And so we set up sound on one wall. It never moved. Mm-hmm. We set up the lights in the middle, and we just had to rotate them 90 degrees for the next set, and then rotate them again another 90 degrees for the next set, and then flip them back to the first position.
I guess we should explain. Richard played cloned news reporters. So it was John Alpha, John Omega, John Beta, and so on, and John Delta, that sort of thing. So we would change his costumes. So we would say,
and each one had slightly different personality as well. And
we now go live to John Delta, who was on the scene, and then we cut to John
and the guy,
Richard Hatch.
The guy was just eating up the lines, and I never get sick, but for some reason, every time a shoot comes along, I do. And I was on some sort of medication, and I'm the sound guy. And I started breaking up laughing in the middle of the scene.
Which never happens.
Right.
But it was that.
But it was that whole situation was so loopy. But his shifting gears from one personality to another, we had to shoot the news desk twice because we had him sitting next to each other in different jackets.
So much fun.
Yeah.
So, really, those are some of the fun scenes that we're putting together right now in special effects. Some of the easiest stuff, which is the news reporter scene, are some of the last ones to be done just because we've been tackling all of the big, heavy-duty stuff. The Ramses Colony itself is, that Star Wars level special effects of an entire city that's set on the edge of a cliff. And there's water that leads up to it. So, of course, when we saw Rogue One with X-Wings flying over the water, we're like, that was our effect, and they beat us to it.
Yeah.
We've been on this for 17
Curse
years.
Your Lucasfilm!
They did it first.
Yeah, well, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, so we're spoofing them now. Yeah.
Well, if they go back and like, oh no, here's we're way before.
Way before. So hopefully it'll do some good for us. So
yeah.
I like it.
Has it gotten the title of the longest running production?
I think Terry Gilliam beats Starship 2 by far.
Well, that film's about ready to be released though. So
yeah.
So the La Mancha movie that Terry Gilliam's been working on literally forever. However, we have not lost nearly as much money as he has on his production.
Well, hey, there you go. I guess that's one of the important things to look at.
We would like to have lost that much money.
Oh.
I'd like to have that much money.
That's what I mean. If we lost it, we must have had it in our hands at some point.
Right?
Very good.
So you got the comic thing going on with the Batmobile and the Batcopter coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Anything out, planned out, other conventions and whatnot that
We're guests at lots of conventions, and I don't have a schedule in front of me at the moment to know where all else we're going. LaffyCon in Lafayette last weekend. We're doing InCon this weekend.
A couple weekends ago, you were at a ballpark in Southern Illinois for
right.
Was that Bat Night?
It was Superhero Night. They were raising money for Children's Hospital or some
That's
such.
Awesome. Yeah,
so we were involved with lots of charities and things like that. But we're scheduled just about every single weekend from May all the way through October. So I just have to keep going back to the calendar and talking with my office manager, Gina, to find out what we're doing next and when and where.
I don't think we mentioned in this, Mark is the only person in the world licensed by DC Comics and Warner Brothers to build full-size, drivable Batmobiles.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we were talking about.
DC Comics sent a spy to my shop pretending to be a customer, and he must have liked what he saw because he recommended licensing. And it took 3 years for them to finally put the license documentation together and get that to me. But after that, it's been a whirlwind of press activity. We had How Do They Do It from Science Channel, and Discovery was in to do a documentary on us. I taught Matt Lauer and Al Roker how to drive the Batmobile on the Today Show.
Nice.
3 days later, they flew me back out to be on Good Morning America because, of course, they couldn't be outdone by the Today Show. And big cool stuff on Travel Channel, Hollywood Treasures, a Japanese show I can't pronounce. A science show in Germany called Galileo. They came over to do a show with us as well. So these kinds of things continue to happen, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I mean, all because you needed a prop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And really, that's what it all boils down to. It's a prop for a movie that led to all of this. Who would have ever thought?
And how long does
I
it
pinch
take?
myself daily.
And how long does it take to make one?
Way too long. Takes about 18 months on average to build each Batmobile because we have so many in the queue at the same time. They order them and then we build them because we don't have the time to really have one on site for them to be able to buy. And it's also a good idea, too, because the Batmobile was built on a 1955 Lincoln Futura concept car. And as a concept car, it really wasn't designed to be practical. So we have to do things. If the customer is really tall, we have to cut out the floor pan and drop it in order to make sure they can fit in it. We also move the pedals forward or backward as needed for accelerator and the brake pedals, things of that nature. And this angle of the steering wheel is really important too. So it's really not a bad thing that we are having to custom build each car for that particular customer because of fit.
Mm-hmm. And the car you're starting to work on right now is going to be right-hand drive for Australia.
Our second one to Australia, our first right-hand drive Batmobile, so that's very exciting for us as well.
So does that mean Robin gets to drive now?
No. Robin shouldn't be allowed to drive the Batmobile. No. And also, I guess we should mention, we're working on a car for a famous ventriloquist. He bought a replica of the 1955 Lincoln Futura concept car, and this is a Batmobile, fiberglass Batmobile body that somebody back in the 90s retrofit and filled in all the areas that Barris had cut out all the areas Barris had filled in on the original metal Futura, creating the world's only drivable version of the as a replica of the 1955 Lincoln Futura. And that ventriloquist happened to be Jeff Dunham. So imagine the phone call there. And it's like, hi, I'm Jeff Dunham. Do you happen to know who I am? Yes, sir, I know who you are. Oh, good. Oh, good. Because he said it's crazy that people either know who I am or they have absolutely no idea who I am. There's no in between.
No, I have no clue what,
And originally we were supposed to just gut the interior and put our more accurate interior in, but then as we kept moving on the project, he kept adding more things. Then eventually we're talking with 8 of the top designers from Ford Motor Company. And they said, Jeff, you know that this car is not very accurate, right? And he said, yeah, Mark and I had talked about that, but we decided to let some of the things go. And they said, well, that's too bad because if it was accurate, we would do a world tour with the car. Oh, wait, Mark, you know what to do to make it more accurate, right? Yeah.
All the stuff I've been telling you.
Yeah.
Right. So he said yes to doing every single thing that was on the list. So I ended up having to add about 75% more work to the Futura restoration project. And now it is an absolute behemoth of a project instead of being a simple, 4-week kind of thing. So we're working on that, and we're just about done with all the fiberglass surgery because it was made for a TV show. It was a Hollywood prop. They used cardboard to fill in those areas of the Batmobile and fiberglassed over with like 2 layers of fiberglass. Anybody who knows anything about fiberglass, 2 layers is nothing. You can pop the panel right off, exactly. So we're strengthening up all of that, grinding out all the cardboard and fiberglassing the back sides of everything to strengthen it all up.
Sounds like a fun project. Are you going to be able to go on the world tour with it?
I doubt it, but that sounds terrific to me.
I think I'll put that in the pitch. Like, well, I did a whole lot of stuff people might want to know about what it took to make this roadworthy.
Exactly. Well, one of the first stops for the car will be the Jay Leno's Garage show. So really looking forward to seeing it on that. That'll be fun.
That would be cool.
Now, Jeff Dunham owns one of the 66 Batmobiles that we built, and that was used on Jay Leno's Garage. So Adam West is sitting in that car, and Jay Leno is in the Superman versus Batman tank Batmobile, and they have a race in the show. And after Adam West takes off with the flamethrower and all of that, Jay Leno says, he still got it. Come on, baby, don't let me down, said Adam. It was great stuff.
Speaking of the flamethrowers, the ones you have actually do have the...
Yes, they do.
Yes.
Except for the original that's sitting
Right. My Bat-1 car as a 17-year-old, we did not think it was wise to put a flamethrower in that car.
Well, there was one particular reason for that, because this car was built on top of, rather than building from the ground up. It was built on top of a 1974 Chevy Monte Carlo. Now,
where's the gas filler on a 74 Monte Carlo?
So, yes, exactly.
I can see that.
Yeah, so Chevy decided it was a good idea to have one of those flip-down license plates on the rear and have the gas filling nozzle on the back, which I suppose is nice because you don't have to pull up to either one side or the other of the gas pumps.
And
Correct.
It doesn't ruin the line.
And it doesn't ruin the line.
Yeah.
So, awesome. But that also happened to be exactly where the flame would have to come out of the back of the car.
Well, you got your fuel.
A controlled burn is the idea.
As an 18-and-a-half-year-old, we're shooting our third Batman fan film, and who are the idiots that were running flame right past our gas filler for the flame shot of our Batman movie? Yes, that was me as an idiot. But then I found out from history the stories about the original Batmobile on the set of the original TV show, and guess what they did as adults?
The same.
They did exactly the same thing.
The gas filler was also at the back.
There it is. They ended up later in second season, and actually the Batman movie came out after first season. They ended up putting the gas filler up on the Robin's fin right beside the rear windshield, and they put the gas tank underneath the rear windshields, which was much safer, and then they could run the flames without any problem
Which is essentially where you have yours now.
Yeah, we duplicate that feature.
Yeah. And now how do you hook up the flames for...
It's a propane tank in the trunk, hidden switches underneath the dashboard, so that way no kid could just accidentally jump in the car to hit a switch and flame his birthday party. All the kids standing back behind the car.
Yeah, check this out.
So it's about 5 steps that are required in order to be able to operate the flamethrower, so it's not something that would ever be done accidentally. And I think that that's very important. But a lot of the features do work on the car. Everything was science fiction back in '66 we can do for real, just like Star Trek and other shows like that. Well, Batman was no different. Batman had the world's first Wi-Fi hotspot. It was called the remote Batcomputer switch. It allowed Batman to connect with the main Batcomputer back in the Batcave via radio link. Batman was way ahead of his time. We're on our 9th prototype blinking, beeping Bluetooth Batmobile Batphone. And it's our first 3D printed item, too, so that's pretty exciting as well, as the technology is catching up to our needs to allow us to do these kinds of things.
In the very first episode, they showed Robin watching a closed-circuit TV that was mounted in the center of the dash of what was going on in the club, right, that Batman went into, because Robin was too young to go into the bar. And... so there's a TV in the middle of the dash, which was done with a visual effect back then. And now, of course, it's very easy to get a small LCD screen to mount
DVD
it into the
player, GPS, satellite radio, all of that is in our cars as well.
How do you do the because if I remember right, they had like the bubble, because it was the tube TV tile thing that was in the thing. Like, do you put the bezel glass over top of it? Or
we just leave it the LCD screen. Yeah, it comes in with a nice frame around it, and that's the way it's mounted, actually.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
But if somebody was a real stickler and they weren't worried so much about the functionality as they were about making it look 100% like they did, we could do that for them.
Yeah, I think you would get a lot of glare on a glass screen versus these, which are a very matte finish on it in the screen. Right.
And a TV screen would be about 3 feet long if it was a genuine tube screen that. Their feet would be hitting it underneath the dash. But it's been crazy fun to work on these cars. You never know who you're going to meet. As I mentioned, a few of the celebrities. We've worked with the late, great Adam West. We've worked with Burt Ward. Adam West was looking at one of our cars. Half of our cars have had Ford engines. Half of them have been GM engines. He was looking at one that happened to be a Ford 460 bored out to a 514 stroker. This car had 702 horsepower. And he said, "How many horsepower was that again?" 702, Adam. That's great. The car that I had was a piece of junk. We just died laughing as he was complimenting the car. And then Burt Ward was walking around one of our cars here in Indianapolis at one of the other conventions. And he was saying, well, that never worked on our car, and that was always broken down on our car. And that's a really cool feature. And, he was really...
Where were you?
Right. Really talking it up. So that was very, very kind of him as well. And was just wonderful to work with these guys at a handful of these comic book conventions. Yvonne Craig, got to meet her and talked with her some about the Batmobile and learned some of the stories that she had to tell. Lee Merriweather as well, and Julie Newmar. So a lot of good times with these celebrities, and just you never know. When you're at a con, there'll be somebody come up saying, I'm such a huge fan. Can I sit in the car? And I'm such a huge fan of yours. Please do.
Go ahead. Let me get pictures. I'll take pictures for you.
Yeah.
Right. So we got to meet Joel Hodgson from Mr. Science Theater 3000, and he came back to the booth, I don't know, it must have been 6 times over the weekend. He kept wanting to take additional pictures of him.
Well, I think that same convention, Sylvester McCoy
from Doctor
Who, he was insisting that I was his car. And as we were driving it out, he's like, they're taking my car.
He was sitting there looking at the bat phone inside the car saying, I need to call my agent. And he says, I need to be in the next Batman movie. So a lot of good times. John DiMaggio was at that one. He was Bender, the voice of Bender, I think, from Futurama. We just had a great time at all of these conventions and just having a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. So you said you're doing a whole lot of charity events and whatnot, and you're booked out. How does somebody get a hold of you if they would like you to bring a car?
The best way to reach us is either through email, through our website, fiberglassfreaks.com, or they can give us a call at 574-722-3237, and be happy to talk with them about their event and about the specifics to be able to make their event happen.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk to...
Absolutely.
Since we're here at InConJunction, let's talk to somebody about InConJunction.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And get some more information on what's going on this year and what we got looking out for next year, possibly.
Well, outstanding.
Sounds great.
And whatnot. So,
thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. To the Batmobile.
All right, so we're now sitting here talking with the assistant convention chair and next year's convention chair, John Golden, for InConJunction.
InConJunction, this year is 38. Mine will be 39. And the way the convention is kind of hosted, however you say, by the Circle of Janus Science Fiction Club based out of Indianapolis. And we, as part of our officer board, we elect the convention chair. And that way, no one person just does it year after year and gets burned out. And so I was named, well, actually I ran for, stupid me, and got this year's convention, following Elka Margonaut, Becky Margonaut, who's got it this year. And we've have Mel Kocius, who's ran it a couple years ago, is going to run it again next year. And in January, we're going to pick the next fool. So, but a lot of people get, volunteer and have done various roles and have rotated to where they have very, experience in different things. And because of the way our system is, next year, if I have a problem, I can look around and find like 6 or 7 past con chairs to turn to.
Like, how did we do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, I'm going to do a lot of preparation beforehand, but stuff comes up.
Oh, yeah, and stuff slides by. Somebody, can't do what they're supposed to do, and you got to figure out how to juggle that around. Big events tend to be a pain. It takes a village. So can you give me a little bit of history on InConJunction?
Okay. I personally moved to Indiana in 2001, became involved with InConJunction in 2002, but the convention itself has been going on pretty much since 1980. It's first one was I think the first one was 81. That's how it lines up to where like InConJunction 10 was 1990, etc. And so we're working towards extra large XL in 2020. And I know that local science fiction fans, they, in that era, 70s going to 80s, that it was largely gatherings of people into literary sci-fi, the Asimov and Heinlein and Tolkien and stuff like that. And, that's the media aspects like Trekkies were just starting to creep in. And so we kind of have our roots in that more literary sci-fi fantasy. And I think it helps us a little that we don't have to have the latest star whatever actor. And then we can afford to do a nice show that is run by fans, for fans, and we just all have fun and gather. And even in the internet age, everybody really likes the opportunity to see each other face to face once in a while.
Oh yeah. And there's people that I met last year. They came by and like, "Hey, how you doing?" And because this is my second year. Yeah. And hopefully the second of many more.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. Hope to see you next year.
Be a part of the show.
And I'll send Mel to take my place and talk to you then.
But so, what do you have any ideas for what you're looking for next year? As we're moving
yeah. By the time everyone sees this is going to be largely history. Though we have a pretty good show going. And my life mate Wendy. Heterosexual life mate. Anyway, I am. Well, personally, I'm a theater addict as well. It's one of the geeky things I do besides the sci-fi and fantasy and gaming, and so, for the visual, that was, if you can see how I cleverly took Shakespeare's "All the World's a Stage," and I changed it to "All These Worlds Are Our Stage," because we started adopting themes about a decade ago, and we had a Harry Potter themed con and others that we kind of emphasize one aspect over another. And the most popular theme and the easiest one to work with when guests crap out on you in the months leading up is to just say, well, we're everything. We are science fiction, we're fantasy, we're gaming, we're costumes, and that's kind of a reflection. I have some people that I am still approaching and I'd love to see here, but we're going to be open to all kinds of things. And one of the first people I contacted was a favorite musician / stand-up comedian, Mikey Mason, and he said he will do his thing.
Nice.
And he has a big YouTube hit with "She Don't Like Firefly," and also a hit among gamers with a song called "Best Game Ever," about the DM's little brother that keeps ruining the game until everybody kind of gangs up and kills him. And it was the best game ever, until next week.
Until next week.
Oh yeah, and a song Alan Moore's Beard. I'm an Alan Moore fan. I should have got that. Yeah, and about how a fantasy about how Alan Moore's beard and I went running around the world and saving crime and stuff like that. But anyway, he was one of my first gets, and then recently, because we're Facebook friends, and he lives in Chicagoland, so we don't have to buy a plane ticket, and because, as it turns out, he went to college in Ball State. He told me that he actually attended the first InCon. Jolly Blackburn, who writes and draws the Knights of the Dinner Table, the man behind Gary Con and all that. He is going to be one of my guests, so that opens up all kinds of possibilities. I'm going to find the folks with the fan film that was connected and maybe get them, or at least the film. And so that, you say, well, you got your comics guest on, that you're still openings for like a novelist, and so I'm kind of scouting around that, And also thinking in terms of tracks, like we know several people who have performed, and we can do a whole music track. We like to do hard science here, and we can like to kind of perk up the InConJunction Institute of Weird Science and have it be more than just Rob Pyatt, PhD's Weird Science panel. Though, you know, if we can keep dragging him back from South Dakota, we will have him. But we want to do other things. You know, people who have like little experiments that get kids of all ages interested in their STEM. So yeah, it's very much in the planning stages, and very much, you know, a few things that I really have want to do. One of the cool things about a convention like, well, any kind of gathering, I've been to numerous conventions in several states in all sizes, and it goes back to 4-H camps as a kid. And you notice one of the things is like the most fun parts of a outing with fellow travelers, fellow geeks, is the stuff that's not in the schedule. And I hope to give everybody good opportunities with the open games and free-form activities. You know, we've been working in that direction now. We've always had the giant jigsaw puzzle that people just obsess over.
That thing hasn't been empty all weekend long.
Yeah, and we have we've started oversized games, giant Uno cards and stuff in there. So it's like, you know, we don't have we don't have William Shatner, you know, signing autographs, but we do have ways that people who love the same culture can come get together, you know,
talk about
it. You know, talk together, talk in conversation pits, play giant Uno just for the heck of it, because hey, I haven't played this in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. And hopefully we can get more casual cans. We're going to get more casual fans as well. You know, that's keep this thing going year after year, because it's hard to sustain the old style fan run convention.
Well, especially with the day of the internet and all that stuff, where they can like just push a button and go see. You know, they don't have to leave the house. They can go to watch stuff in San Diego and whatnot.
Yeah,
so.
and you know that's what you could, instead of it's hard to sell the panels when you can just argue online. But if you can do like a little DIY, or like one of Wendy's things is the sonic spatula, where she gives like recipes and kitchen hacks. And if you're sitting right, if you're sitting right there looking at the Dalek cake, you can't do that online.
No.
Yes, we did make a chocolate cake that's shaped like a Dalek. We hope to bring that back.
That sounds fun and delicious.
And Whoppers make the little bumps.
Again, even more delicious. I'm going to need 2. But so thank you for coming out and talking with us. And like I said, we'll see you next year, hopefully.
Yes.
And
InConJunction.org is our website, and we have a very active Facebook page, and we're constantly keeping up with that. And if you have any questions or suggestions or anything, always looking for volunteers. As of the end of this convention, I think pretty much everybody, at least in their mind, is going to be, I quit. So I'm going to be starting fresh. I'll get some people back, but and anybody who wants to bring fresh ideas and new things. We had our first drag show, the drag race, because we had a drag queen as our costume guest of honor. Who'd have thunk? But it was fun. It was a hit. And things,
cool.
And because you could dress up and do a drag show as a cartoon character or a comic book character, then it still fits in fandom and geekdom, So yeah, it's wide open. Whatever we want to do.
Cool. Like I said, I will see you then, and we'll bring up the next person to talk. We're going to talk to somebody about Starbase Indy.
Yeah, the next fan run extravaganza later this year.
So, thank you very much. All right, so we're sitting here with Lisa from Starbase Indy, and let's find out a little bit about what Starbase Indy is.
Starbase Indy started life as a fan-run Star Trek convention, right? And so we're known for bringing in actors, and we've had a lot of the big names over the years. This will be the 30th anniversary of our first event. So it hasn't run continuously, which is why I say it that way. But in 1988 was the first Starbase Indy. And one of the things that we did last year was we went and we got our 501c3 because we're trying to differentiate ourselves in a world where a lot of conventions are bringing in actors, right? And we don't want to compete with Gen Con or Indiana Comic Con, right? We want to keep a fan-run feel. We're a fairly small event. We're typically under 1,000 people. So when we bring somebody in, you actually have a chance to sit down and have conversations. And
it's more intimate with the people that you get to see.
Absolutely. And one of the things that our attendees love is they walk away with memories not just of seeing somebody on stage, but seeing somebody, and having a conversation with them. A lot of times our guests attend the evening parties, and they hang out and share stories in a little bit more personal setting. But what we did a couple years ago when we went and got our 501c3 is we brought a lot of science in. We went back to Gene Roddenberry's original vision because Roddenberry's vision changed our world. And it moved it in a positive direction. This thing is falling off. There are a lot of science fiction worlds out there that I like to read about and watch on a movie screen. There are a smaller number of science fiction worlds out there that I would like to go live in.
Right? Because you're just like, and I'd love to go there. I'd love to go. No, thank you.
I like to watch the Hunger Games. If you've got a space for me in Pan Am, I'm good. But if you've got a room for me in the Starship Enterprise, you can beam me up right now. Right? And so the way humans create change is we vision it first. So this idea of visioning a hopeful future is the core of our mission. So we bring in scientists. We have Dr. Erin McDonald coming this year. She's an astrophysicist. She has a YouTube show called Dr. Erin Explains the Universe.
Nice.
Yeah, she uses pop culture references to help people understand real astrophysics.
That's I saw something similar. I'm going to check that out. But
yeah.
What's his name? He did the whole the time travel or the science of Doctor Who at the Royal thing in London.
Yeah. There's a lot of people doing that.
You're like,
it's okay. It's okay. I don't remember the name either, so you're good. We had some of that last year, and people really liked it because it's really interesting, right? When I say to people, we've become a mashup with a science event, there are some people who are like, oh. I'm like, no. Back up, not homework, robots and virtual reality. And we've got a panelist coming in to talk about the ethics of artificial intelligence. Like, what an interesting idea.
Right, and that falls right in with, you're looking at like, the stuff they explored with data and all the other, the storylines between that and his interactions with the crew and trying to become human.
Right, and one of the core themes of Star Trek from the very beginning is what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to have agency and to be someone we would consider to have rights? And we saw that on Discovery with in the early part of the season where here's this creature that's very, very useful and also we think is sentient, and is it okay for us to basically kill them to get where we want to go? Those ethical pieces are a part of the heart of Star Trek. And so that's kind of where that's been our focus. And the other thing we're a community. A lot of people call it their geek family Thanksgiving tradition, right? So you do Thanksgiving dinner on Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you come hang out with your geeky friends and get to see people you only see a couple times a year. You get to be in a convention environment. There's nothing quite like a fan-run convention environment.
No, because everything's like, it's all about talking to other fans. You actually get to. It's not being herded through a vending hall or your next photo shoot, or you actually get to talk to people and experience and relate your your loves, your fandoms.
Exactly. If you're going to go to one of the big signing conventions at the convention center, and some of them are lovely, but they're not the same, because you go there to see a huge name 100 feet away from you. Or maybe you do this thing where you get a picture signed so you can, have a memory of that experience and a tangible thing. It's about kind of counting coup with the actors, right? That way of proving you were close, right? Yeah. You go to a fan-run convention to have conversations with other people who love the things you love and who have interesting ideas. It's that interaction. Rather than being a spectator, you're a participant. And that's what makes fan-run conventions a special place in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And when we talk about fan-run, I have a lot of people who don't do fan-run conventions in my life who are like, they pay you for all this, right? I'm like, no. No, this is like being a deacon in a church or being a coach of a little league team. It's about building space for a community that I care about. And that's true of all the people who are organizing it. And we had a little bit of a kerfuffle earlier this year. We didn't think we had enough people to help put on the show. And so we actually canceled the event in March.
I remember we actually we talked about that on one of our shows, and and then when you guys made the announcement, like, we're back on,
right?
It's like,
and
we were like, yay!
Yeah, and I'm excited that we're talking today because 10,000 people saw the announcement that we were canceled, and only about 6,000 people saw the announcement that we were back. So I feel like there's a gap in the number of people we need to reach still. So we're doing everything we can to get the word out that we are, in fact, we're still here. And what happened was the community stepped up and said, hey, no, this can't go away. Randy Cowan, who is our con chair this year, who stepped into this role and has taken on this mantle and is doing a fantastic job, was like, this event means a thing to my family. It means a thing to my kid. If you follow us on Facebook, there's a picture that we put out this week of his son meeting Dr. David Wolf, the astronaut, last year.
Nice.
Meeting his hero and having his hero say to him, yes, you can go to Mars. Absolutely. This is a thing you can make real in your life. He's like, so this is going nowhere. If I have to stand bodily in front of it to save it, which is basically what he's doing. Love you, Randy. Then I will. And so that, I think, is kind of cool because this is what science fiction fans do. Their favorite show gets canceled, and they're like, oh, no. We're going to send hot sauce to the network. We are going to keep this thing going. And so I think it's going to be a really special year. Not only is it the 30th anniversary, we've got some favorites coming back. The other guest we've announced is Sandy Gimpel. She played the Salt Vampire in the pilot episode of Star Trek, the original series. And she is still working as a stunt woman in Hollywood today.
Still?
Yes. Wow. So she's got better than 50 years of career stories. And she's actually great. She's been here once before. And she can talk on stage about not only being in the pilot before anybody even knew it was going to be a thing, right? She was part of Elvis's entourage and was like 50 of his movies, used to hang out with him at his house, right?
Sweet.
If you remember the movie Airplane with the Girl Scout fight, she's one of the Girl Scouts, right? And she talked about how that fight was a new thing in Hollywood because you didn't have girls fighting like that. That's part of why it was so funny 38 years ago. So she's been part of that history. She was the first stunt woman to get her director's card.
Nice.
Yeah. So we look for guests who, look, your neighbor who doesn't watch sci-fi is not going to know our guests. They're not going to know the characters. They're not going to know the names. We're not ever going to have Chris Pine or William Shatner. We can't afford them. No, right. And they're not going to hang out with the fans. We're going to have that character actor who's been in 14 of your favorite shows, and then you're going to get to hear those behind-the-scenes stories. About a couple of weeks after this last year's show, I was falling asleep in front of the television because I'm tired for a couple weeks after the show. And I'm sitting next to my husband, and he goes, and I'm like, what? And we were watching an episode of Lucifer, and John Billingsley, who was one of our guests last year, who we had just met and just had in town, was the bad guy. He was the serial killer. He's like, it's John. So that's the thing that's cool about Starbase Indy, because these people show up in all these shows, and it's a different experience to meet and talk to this actor and then see them as a character.
Right. Working on films is
Yeah.
You turn around and you're like, well, I know they're famous, they do this, and then you work with them, and then you realize, okay, now I see where you're like, no, there they are, and no, there they are, there they are, and you're like, hey, that guy, we sat around and talked for hours. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool, and then you see him on screen, and it's a different experience, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And having the opportunity to actually sit down and do that in a non-work setting where you can just relax and have drinks and whatnot and be able to talk, and that's, I think, would be something that anybody should experience, especially even if you're not familiar with that person yet. Mm-hmm. Be like, hey, I want to
absolutely
check out what they've done and hear the stories.
And it's not just about the actors that are up on the main stage, right? We've got other tracks of programming. We have a track called The Lab, which is going to be practical experiments. Nice. We have a panel called Edible Entomology. You don't have to eat the bugs, but people eat the bugs. I mean, and they talk about the science of using bugs as food sources. We've got a panel on DNA. They're going to take some DNA from a banana and some DNA from a strawberry, so they're going to do that extraction, and then they're going to compare them, right? So this is great for kids. You want to get kids interested in science. Put their hands on something, right? So we've got that kind of stuff going on. We're still figuring out our programming. If people are interested in talking about something they're excited about in the world of science or the world of humanitarianism or the world of Star Trek or the world of science fiction, go to our website, starbasedindy.org, and click on the little button at the top. There's a drop-down menu for programming. If you want to speak at Starbase Indy, we're still accepting submissions. Our vendor room is fantastic. We've got some of them are here, but we have a bigger vendor room. We really started emphasizing the geek holiday shopping experience last year. I mean, we exist over Black Friday and Small Business Saturday, and almost all of our vendors are small businesses. So these are craftsmen and artists, and we've got a couple who are collectors who have things that they have collected over 30 years of fandom, and that they are like, well, my kids don't really want this, so I'm going to go sell it at a convention to someone who will love it. So if you're starting your holiday shopping, this is a great place to do it. We sell a shopping-only badge for $5. And we actually have a coupon code that I can't remember right now that is for $5 off, but can you link it to the show if I give it to you before you? Okay. So anyone can use that for $5 off the badge, and we actually stack that with the Geeky Shopping Patch. So you can get that for free if you sign up ahead of time.
There you go.
Which sounds like, why would you not just give them away? And there's a reason. It's because now that we're a 501c3, we're recruiting sponsors. So we've got to be able to tell sponsors how many people came.
Right.
So that has changed the dynamic for us a little bit. That's a new thing for us. So this is how we're trying to get people sucked in and involved.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we can set up and do this.
Yeah.
At Starbase Indy, and check them out. The website, starbaseindy.org. And get your tickets. Check it out. It's fun stuff, and we will hop off here. We have a whole lot of stuff to do. So
bye. Thanks.